Hi, folks, and welcome into another edition of This Week in Pearl. I am your host, Frank Hutton. So glad that you decided to come and join us today. Got a good show for you today after we've been on a little bit of a hiatus for the last couple of weeks. That legislative session runs a long time, and we just gin these out really quick and then give us a little bit of chance to take a little bit of break and celebrate Pearl Day, which we just had, which massive turnouts not only in the park, but as well at our concert that we had at Trustmark Park. So it was a fantastic day, a wonderful weekend, and now we're back at it having This Week in Pearl. And This Week in Pearl is going to be a great one. We've got a special guest that our own Representative Gene Newman brought with us today. It's going to be Representative Lee Yancey. He's 74 District, which is the Flowood area, so we're really happy to have him on the show. So don't go anywhere, because when we come back, we're going to introduce Lee Yancey to you. So stay right there. We'll be right back.
Hello, I'm Mayor Wyndham, and I'm thrilled to show you the city creating its own future. Pearl is located in Rankin County, the fastest growing county in Mississippi, and there's no question why. Access to great schools, even better shopping, and unbridled beauty make Pearl a town that truly embodies its name. And with a truly exceptional team of first responders, public safety is another key component of our success. With fantastic housing opportunities from quaint suburban neighborhoods to gorgeous lakefront properties, there's a place for you here in Pearl. You can't beat the location. Right outside of Pearl is the crossroads of the South, where Interstate 20 meets Interstate 55. From here you can travel anywhere within the state or the country. Or you can choose to stay right here in Pearl or experience the small town atmosphere, community pride, and heart of the local residents.
Hello everyone, and welcome back into This Week in Pearl, where I am headed under the dome again, but this time with a special guest we're going to bring in right now. Lee Yancey, District 674 Representative, and thank you Representative Gene Newman for bringing him in today. So welcome.
Thank you very much. Great to be here.
Good to have you here.
It's great to have you here. This is you are sitting in a famous dean seat, our senator. He usually sits right there.
Well,
So
I'm not worthy.
I swear, but thank you for coming in. Now, we were talking a little bit before this about where your district is, and just explain to everybody where your District 74 is.
Sure. Well, I live in Flowood, and I have basically what's south of Lakeland Drive and north of Highway 80 from Dogwood Mall down to Cross Gates all the way over to Pillahatchee. So North Brandon Estates, a lot of Flowood, a little bit of Pearl, a little bit of Brandon.
Little sliver here and there
Yes.
of both of those.
That's
so
right.
For our audience that may not know you very well, you were born in Ripley, Mississippi. Kind of tell us where you were born and
Sure.
a little bit about your childhood.
So many moons ago, 1968, I was born in Tippah County in Ripley, Mississippi. Tipper County, if you're from up there. My dad, Rex, is a Baptist preacher. He's retired for the second or third time now and looking for a place to preach Sunday. My mother's a retired public school teacher. She taught mostly first grade for about 25 years. And we moved around as Dad was a preacher. We lived in the Tupelo area. He went to seminary in New Orleans. I went to first and second grade in New Orleans. We moved back to Tupelo, where I went to, I'd gone to kindergarten in Tupelo and then went to third grade there. Then we moved to Saltillo, fourth, fifth, sixth, part of seventh grade. Moved to Quitman, First Baptist Church of Quitman in '81 when I was in the middle of the seventh grade. And I graduated from high school there in Quitman. Then went on to First Baptist Pascagoula for 15 years, and then back to First Baptist Ripley, and now they've moved down to Brandon. So after high school in Quitman, I went to Mississippi College, followed by New Orleans Baptist Theological Seminary. had a career as a youth minister for about 10 years, then became the senior consultant for the Christian Action Commission of the Mississippi Baptist Convention for 7.5 years, where I basically lobbied the legislature on moral and social ethical issues, and got the sense that, got the political bug, started working in Rankin County politics, got on the Rankin County Republican Executive Committee, was co-chair for President Bush's reelection in 2004, volunteered for every Republican campaign that came along, kind of paid my dues, and in 2007, our state Senate seat was vacated by Senator Charlie Ross when he ran for lieutenant governor against the state auditor at that time, Phil Bryant. And so I ran for Senator Ross's Senate seat and was successful. And so from 2008 to 2012, I was in the Senate. At the same time, I started work for what is now Element Wealth, which is an investment firm. We, financial planning, retirement planning. Last year, almost 2 years ago now, we were bought out by Ross & Yerger. We're a division of Ross & Yerger, the largest independent insurance company in the state, a top 100 firm in the country. And so investments and insurance are my world on the side now. Have all my licenses and all of that.
That's your day job.
So
Right.
after 4 years in the Senate, there was a vacancy at state treasurer. I ran for that against Lynn Fitch and Lucian Smith, two very fine people, and made the runoff, and Lynn ultimately won that. She's now our Attorney General. So then I was out of politics for a little while. Governor Bryant appointed me to the State Personnel Board, where I served 5.5 years and was chairman of that. While working at the investment firm, I also became an interim pastor and then a pastor part-time at the Bay Springs Baptist Church in Jasper County for 5.5 years, 2013 to 2018. And then in 2019, I saw that the House seat was coming open in my district, which was Mark Baker, who was going to run for Attorney General. And so I was very, very good friends with Josh Harkins, who was my senator at the time, and Mark Baker, and so would never have run against them. And then when Mark vacated the seat, I ran for the House and was successful in that. So I've been in the House with Gene for the last 6 years, and here we are. Here we are. So you asked for all that, and
right.
We didn't get into family or anything like that, but happily married for 32 years, have 2 children, 2 grandchildren, and grandchildren are the best thing yet.
Aren't
so
they?
yes.
Now, how old are they?
They're 2 years old and 8 months old.
And 8 months.
Yes.
Boy, girl.
Girl and boy.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
So you got both of them. Good.
Yep.
Wonderful.
Yep.
So you'll be like me and spoil them.
That's right. That's my job.
That's your job.
Yep.
Well, I was just doing a little bit, just some background on you, and one of the things that I ran across is you like running marathons.
Well, I used to.
You used to.
In my youth.
Okay, because I ran across that. I'm like, really? So you were a
I ran 6, and it started out as sort of a raise money for leukemia and lymphoma research. Had a couple of friends who had passed away from those terrible diseases, and interestingly enough, like I've mentioned to you before, I've had cancer twice myself in the last 5 years. So, but back in 2002, I was running with Team in Training with Leukemia and Lymphoma Society. And my first marathon was in Bermuda, so don't feel too bad for me. Bermuda, okay. After I did that, I kind of got in the bug, and so I became a coach for them, and did other marathons in San Diego, the Rock and Roll Marathon in San Diego in June of 2002. Then went to Maui in 2003.
Oh yeah, so it's horrible.
Chicago in 2004. Memphis in 2005.
Yeah.
So they were great trips, and great. Just I was somebody who was always going 100 miles an hour in my personal life, in my work, and I needed the running to just get rid of some of the energy and the stress relief.
Sure.
So, and I enjoyed coaching, and I enjoyed raising the money for cancer research.
I was going to say you were raising money for cancer research.
Yes.
And that pivots us right into our. You are a survivor of cancer.
Absolutely.
That's kind of ironic, isn't it?
Well,
Yeah.
The first cancer I had was diagnosed right after I got back in the legislature. You know, I thought, Lord, you know, now that I've gotten back in, you know, what was the whole purpose of this if I'm just going to get cancer and this is going to be it? But it was on the base of my tongue, and it was stage 2, and we treated it with chemo and radiation to the summer of 2020. That was the COVID year.
That was the
That
COVID
was so bad, and the legislature was in session from January all the way until September or October. It was, you know, we were in and out maybe a few days a week or one day a week there for a while,
Right.
and so it was a very odd time. But after, you know, chemo once a week for about 12 weeks and radiation every day from June until the 1st of August, you know, I got to ring the bell and was cancer free from that. And this June, God willing, will be my 5-year anniversary of that, and I'll be released from my doctor for checkups for that. But then this past year, I've been having some problems, and went to the doctor, and we found out I had prostate cancer. And they say most men will not die of prostate cancer, but will die with it because most of us get it.
Right.
But I happened to get it in my 50s instead of my 70s. And so I went to MD Anderson for a second opinion, and I was hoping I could do some type of radiation treatment or something to that effect. But I'm really too young for radiation because it causes cancer itself.
Right.
And so surgery was the option, and had a really good doctor and really good health care here in Mississippi, and I'm very proud of that. And you know, after having that surgery, you know, PSA levels were tested and have been tested, you know, months and months after, and it's still 0. So, praise the Lord. I'm living to fight another day, and if I get cancer again, we'll deal with it then.
You'll deal with it then.
But you know, all of us are heading in the same direction. These bodies wear out.
They do.
And you know, I'm confident in my salvation, and I know where I'm going when I die. And you know, I hope that what I've been through will be helpful to others who are going through it, and maybe God would use this as a testimony. You know, that you know He is the one who loves us and helps us get through the things that we encounter here in this life, and it's just preparation for the next.
Has that changed you in how you maybe deal with people, how you legislate? Has that changed you in any way?
I can answer that. Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah,
answer.
it has. The first time it changed him, and this time it's changed him. It, you know, not a bad way.
Right.
It's all been positive. But I think it actually slowed him down a little bit. I think he's more deliberate about what he does.
Would you agree?
Oh yeah, having been a pastor, I had been with people who had suffered and had various cancers, and I thought I was sympathetic to what they were going through, but I had no idea what they were going through, and now I do.
Yeah,
I know exactly what they're going through.
First-hand knowledge.
And when someone tells me they have cancer or they have chemo coming or radiation, I know exactly what they're facing, and I can say, hey, I've been there too, and I know what you're going through, and there's a light at the end of the tunnel, and you know, and you can make it, and so that's been encouraging to do that, and it's helped me in certain legislation too. We can talk about all you want, but you know, there were things I would have never considered for anyone as far as treatment options, and it kind of changed my perspective on those things as well.
I would imagine so, because my father's going through prostate cancer right now. Of course, he's 77, so he's doing radiation.
Yeah.
Right. So he's going through that right now. Of course, you and I are the same age. So
if I had been 77, I would have had proton therapy or radiation or something else probably. Yeah.
it is in the back of my mind, because as you said, most of us, we're going to get it. The question is when.
Sure.
Right. Pretty much decided. All right. So you serve on. We're talking about health. You serve on that as the chairman of that committee in the House. Is that right?
Well, I'm chairman of the Business and Commerce Committee, but I serve on public health,
serve on public
Medicaid, drug policy,
Right.
And so deal with health issues. You know, every session.
Leads me to two questions. One, the bill that got passed this year, the Kratom kind of walk us through that, because that
Okay.
that was one of the things that I was not as familiar with when Dean and Gene brought it to my attention, and I had to go to our narcotics guys in the police department and say, okay, educate me on what this stuff is. Of course,
Sure.
they did.
Kratom is a tough issue because there are many people who are completely addicted to it and whose lives are ruined by it because they spend all their money on it. They spend their family's money. They spend the rent money, and some have died as a result of it. And yet there are some people who are getting off of opioids who have found kratom to be a crutch, if you will, to help them get off of those other harder drugs, and it helps them to be functional because perhaps they take it in moderation. Now there's kratom, which is a natural leaf that comes from Indonesia, Southeast Asia. It's not been approved by the FDA. It is allowed to be imported into America as a food additive or food, something that goes into sports drinks or something like that. But so you have your kratom, and then you have your synthetic kratom. All kratom contains an active ingredient that causes you to feel high or have a type of, relief from their pain, and it's called 7-OH, 7-hydroxymetragenine.
That's a mouthful.
I know, 7-OH. And so what people, who were trying to create a stronger effect would do is they would chemically remove the 7-OH from the kratom and create products out of the 7-OH synthetically. So it is a kratom product, but it doesn't, it's much more potent than kratom. And so in years past, I have been able to successfully have all kratom banned, but the bill failed in the Senate. And I think the idea was that, the FDA's not ruled on this. Why are we getting ahead of the federal government, et cetera? And it didn't seem like there was an urgency on the Senate side. And so the State Medical Association still wants to ban it. They want 100% ban. But this year I did something different. Rather than have this 100% pure outlook, Haley Barbour was governor when I was in the Senate. He used to say, Lee, purity is a loser. And so if you can get 80% of what you want, you need to take your win and go home.
Okay.
And so I
Good
filed
advice.
a bill this year that made it, you have to be 21 to purchase kratom. Kratom must be kept behind the counter. All synthetic forms of kratom are banned. And any counties or cities that have already banned kratom, those bans are left in place. The state law would not overrule the local law that they passed. And any future cities or counties that would like to ban it can do so. And so that bill passed House, Senate, signed by the governor this past week. And so we finally have something done on kratom.
And it passed unanimously in the House and the Senate.
And so
That's great. I didn't know that.
there are, the Medical Association it wasn't enough for them. It wasn't enough for others, but the people using kratom, trying to get off of other drugs, it's still an option for them if they're over 21 and they just take the natural product.
Not the synthetic product.
Right, synthetics is banned, and they're not allowed to sell that anymore.
That's wonderful. July 1.
July 1.
So just a few TikToks and we'll be there.
There you go.
And that'll be a success story. That sounds like you got good advice.
Well, I don't know that purity is always a loser, but
Well, in politics.
but in politics, politics from the Latin poly, meaning many, and ticks, blood-sucking parasites. In politics, 80% of what you want is pretty good, but you're going to be judged on the 20% that you allowed.
That's true. That's very true. That's very
And
true.
they judged me for allowing kratom on medical cannabis. I was the person assigned that job by Speaker Philip Gunn in 2021. And, we had already had the ballot initiative and knew that medical cannabis was coming at some point. The ballot initiative had passed overwhelmingly. They would say 74% had voted for it. You could, tweak the numbers any way you want, but it was a majority.
Sure.
And it was coming, and it was coming in a way that we were uncomfortable with being placed in our Constitution. And when the Supreme Court threw that out, as the new drug policy chairman, dealing with medical cannabis fell on me. And having been a Baptist pastor and with my background, I think that I was in a unique position to handle that issue. I think I had a trust factor that others may not have had with that. But I had also just had cancer. And I didn't use cannabis, but there was a time when I lost so much weight. I mean, I had gotten down to, you know, skin and bones, and the doctor said, if you lose any more weight, you're going to have to get a feeding tube.
Oh, wow.
And I said, well, I don't want a feeding tube. What do I need to do? And he's like, well, you got to eat. And I went to Steak and Shake in Pearl and got a peanut butter power up, you know, 1,000 calorie shake every day after radiation. That was my, and that's pretty much what I ate the whole day.
And Reese's, and every time I saw him,
you know,
I had one of those.
And after, you know, I began liking chocolate after the radiation and chemo that I never really liked. Chocolate milk, chocolate ice cream, chocolate cake.
Anything for
I
calories.
couldn't get enough.
Anything for calories.
But
Sure.
at any rate, cannabis would have increased my appetite. And there are a number of uses, and you could argue that that's not a medical use. I would argue that it has value, and that it would keep someone from starving to death who is going through something like that.
You also had a desk mate whose wife was dying from cancer.
Yes.
Oh,
And,
really?
and a lot of her problems was caused by her addiction to the opioids that she was taking to try to
So it was a chain
slow
reaction.
the pain.
Sure,
Yeah.
sure. Really?
That's right. And everybody had a story. Everyone knew someone who needed to try it or had issues that were, you know, frightening to them, and opioids just were not the right answer. And they had tried them, and they had caused a lot of side effects. And a lot of people who were in the, you know, late stages of cancer, the choice was to be in complete pain and agony, or to be doped up out of their head, asleep and not lucid, and you know, all kinds of problems that are caused by opioids, constipation, just agony for people. Or you could let someone who's dying use cannabis, and it seemed to be the you know, humane thing to do, and it's a drug like all the other drugs that are regulated.
Right.
And we became, you know, I think somewhere around the 35th to 40th state who had done medical.
Are you happy with the way
And,
it's rolled out
and-
in the state? Or is it the
No
way
pun
you-
intended.
No pun intended. Right.
Okay. We have been happy with it. We knew that there would be some issues, but we tried to build a wall around it. When I say we, Kevin Blackwell and I in the Senate.
Right. Right.
We tried to make it where cities and counties could opt out if they did not want to participate. We didn't want to shove it down anyone's throat. We made it where there was a certain amount that you could get per week and per month. There were requirements. You had to have a certain debilitating condition. Those were limited. You know, not just anybody can go get it. So we have the health department regulating it, the Department of Revenue regulating it. We're taxing it. We're testing it. We have testing centers. We have a testing center in Flowood called Steep Hill. That is one of the major testing centers in the state. Testing it for potency and for purity to make sure nothing's been added to it. There's no fentanyl in it. There's no lead. There's no insecticides or pesticides. So generally, people in the industry, you know, had a lot of requirements on them to even participate. It was expensive to get a license, and you know, most of them grew too much. And our patient count is now up to about 55,000 patients. We've probably issued about 70-something thousand cards, and we have a number who have not renewed for whatever reason. But you know, until that patient count gets up to more like 100,000, you know, in a 3 million population, they're going to continue to struggle. And some of them will make it and some of them will not. Sure. But we didn't want to only issue a certain amount of licenses for fear that, you know, favoritism would be shown and we would be picking winners and losers as a state. And we wanted the free market to determine, you know, who made it and who didn't. So I think it's been a success, and we continue to monitor it, continue to tweak the bill every year to make changes that would make the program more efficient and people getting a card, easier for them. At the same time, cracking down on illegal use of it, because we certainly don't want illegal use of it.
No, and I think it's been fine. And I know people that have medical conditions that it does benefit, and I'm great with that, because I do think it's a God-given plant, and used correctly, I think it does help, especially people that are suffering from cancer, or in my case, I know somebody that has some severe bone issues, and it's just not operable, and opioids are just not a choice. So, and to be able to even sleep at night, that's they're card carrying by their bid every month like they're supposed to, and it allows them to at least be able to sleep. So I mean, that's a benefit I see. But so, what would be the I guess in terms of legislation? What's the legislation you're most proud of? Would it be that, or is there something else? And we can go back to the Senate if you would like, but some piece of legislation that you got behind that you're most proud of, or that you sponsored or authored.
You know, as a pastor in Bay Springs, there was a couple who had a child who was born with Down syndrome, and I think about how Jesus would have viewed all of us, and whom he would have considered the least of these. Even as you've done to the least of these, you've done to me. And I've always wanted to make sure that those who were born with those type of conditions, Down syndrome or autism or whatever it is that makes them a little bit different, but still valuable in God's eyes, and still, a human being, had access to all the treatments that everyone else did. And so the little boy in Bay Springs, his name was Cole, and we did a bill called Cole's Law. It took several years to get passed, but basically said if someone with Down syndrome or another condition like that needed an organ transplant, and as long as there was a plan for them on the other side by their physician, and with this transplant they would live out as normal a life as possible, they could not be bumped in line in waiting for an organ simply because they had Down syndrome or something else. And it took a while, but that bill passed, and MORA, the Organ Recovery Agency, supported us, and UMMC supported us, and that was a really big deal for me. And,
Sounds like
and
that.
I'll always be glad that I did that.
Right, that sounds like a really good one. That I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yep.
All right, so before we kind of wrap up, I want a couple of things that have been interesting this year. And since you're sitting in the chair, let's talk about pharmacy board. Gene looking at me like, oh no. We didn't do anything with it this year, did we, Gene?
The PBM.
PBMs.
It wasn't because we didn't try.
I know, right?
Gene, I've talked an awful lot. I'm going to give you a chance.
Well, I looked at
Don't you down now.
because we talked about PBMs just a couple of shows ago. That was one of the things that had survived. It just didn't make it all the way through. But I mean, you've been trying to get PBMs fixed for eons.
Yeah, well,
Yes.
he has too. I mean, when he was chairman of the drug policy committee, he dealt with this same issue. It's this is not new, and the one thing, we're going to deal with it again next year if the governor doesn't decide to call a special session on this issue, which I really think he might. I think there's a good chance that he might do that at some point.
Really?
But the attorney general just got a restraining order against one of the PBMs down on the coast. She did that last week. I saw an announcement that she had gotten a restraining order to prevent them from paying different amounts and freezing out independent drugstores. So I haven't seen the order, so I don't know exactly what it says. I just saw the announcement about it. So this is an issue that's festering up, and then we're hearing that President Trump intends to do something with it too. So he's going to try to push something through Congress.
Okay. So Lee, do we sit and wait on federal government, or
No, we don't never wait on federal government.
Oh, right. You weigh in on where we are with PBMs.
One of the things I always try to let our Republican colleagues know is that there are three different players, at least three, in this issue. You have your independent pharmacists who are not getting reimbursed adequately. Mm-hmm. You have your employers who are providing health insurance benefits for their employees, mm-hmm. and who are contracting with a private contract with a PBM, mm-hmm. in order to reduce costs for their employees to keep their premiums down. And the PBMs design a plan for them, a formulary for them with the drugs that would be covered, and they have a network of pharmacies that provide these drugs, and the independent pharmacists are getting left out. So if you are going to make the independent pharmacists whole, how do you do that without driving up the costs of the businesses who are providing the health insurance, mm-hmm. for their employees? And how does that work? And I think everyone's been so mad at the PBMs, mm-hmm. and so sympathetic with the independent pharmacists, that they forget about the businesses and all of the employees of the businesses. If you look at the ERISA plans across our state, all of these companies that provide insurance for their employees, how do you keep their costs down while making the independent pharmacists whole? Mm-hmm. I think if you can answer that question, you can solve this problem, because the PBMs are providing these low premiums by directing them to pharmacies with whom they have agreements with. And now there are rebates that go back and forth. Mm-hmm. Perhaps if that rebate went back to the employers who are providing the insurance, maybe that they could use that to keep the costs down. But that has to be taken into consideration. And I don't know that was taken into consideration on some of the legislation that's come before us. I can tell you that it is very, very popular to make the independent pharmacists whole, but you have BIPEC, the Business Industry Political Education Committee. You have the Mississippi Manufacturers Association. You have the Mississippi Economic Council, all who are standing up and saying, wait a minute, what about our businesses? How are we going to make sure this doesn't double their insurance premium and basically cause them to either lay off employees or stop providing insurance? That hurts all of these people, and so how can we help the independent pharmacists without hurting the business? And that is the question we're trying to solve.
Thoughts on how to do that?
That's what we throwing stuff against the wall,
sure.
Trying to figure it out. In other words, and we thought we had it resolved this year. We thought we had an agreement between everybody, and then at the last minute it derailed. So
potentially you could provide the rebates to the employers and not have the PBMs keep the rebates. Perhaps you could not allow clawback provisions where the PBMs claw back money from the independent pharmacists, mm-hmm. after 6 months or a year has passed and the money's not there anymore.
Sure.
An independent pharmacist shouldn't have to fill a prescription that costs them money to fill.
Of course
that
not.
Doesn't make any sense, and we're all sympathetic to that. So, this is just one of those, every time you move something over here, we talked about changing the districts, but if you change a precinct here, there's a ripple effect. Mm-hmm. Everything that you do in this issue, there's a ripple effect. Mm-hmm. And so you have to figure out how to help them without hurting them.
Yes, and that was one of the things that Gene and I discussed a couple of programs back, was that very thing about clawing back that money from the independent pharmacist a year later. And mm-hmm. and how do we stop that? Mm-hmm. That's,
you make it the law.
Well, yes, right. But you got to get what 80% of that to get it through. Is that about right? Is that about right? All right. One other topic, which is this one is also near and dear, is nurse practitioners. Nurse practitioners, and how they're able to practice. And I know we need more medical professionals, right? But my concern is you end up with a doctor who's been to school for 15 years versus a nurse practitioner who may have gone 4. There's a huge gap here. Where are you on nurse practitioners and allowing them to practice? And
So first of all, I've always sided with the doctors because I have said that the person who goes to school the longest, if you want to be a doctor, go to medical school. But I will say this about nurse practitioners. Most of them aren't going to school 4 years anymore. Many of them are going 10 or 12 or 15. And
Right.
so they are becoming more and more, educated in what they're doing. They are needed in what they're doing. In the metropolitan areas, most of the nurse practitioners there have a great role and they are happy like it is and don't necessarily want to be separated from a collaborative agreement with the physician. Out in the rural areas, nurse practitioners, sometimes they're the only health professional that anyone can see.
right.
And they are basically performing the role of a physician, and they have a collaborative agreement with someone who maybe, looks at their things once a month or looks at a sample of their cases once a month and kind of rubber stamps it and collects a check from the nurse practitioner. That doesn't seem right to me either. Mm-hmm. So, I'm for finding a way
And
for.
you got the issue that so many of those doctors are retiring and they can't find doctors to sign on with.
But nurse practitioners generally, people want to practice medicine where they can make money, and that's not the rural areas. And so, how do we fix our access to care problem? How do we fix our nursing shortage problem? Those are all big things that are before us, and Gene and I are expected to be experts from A to Z in the encyclopedia.
You're not?
Okay? And the more we look at these things and the more we try to solve these problems, we become more educated
Sure.
in it. But you can just look at one side and get all bent that way, and just look at the other side, and you've got to find a way that is best for the people of Mississippi.
Sure.
And how can we help them have the best health care they can have? Because I've been a beneficiary of that health care, and I would not have wanted a nurse practitioner removing my prostate.
Right.
Okay. So I wanted a guy or a girl who had done it a million times and that knew what they were doing and had been trained to do it. My surgeon was trained at MD Anderson. I was very confident that he was competent and it was going to be as good as it could be, Lord willing, and the creek don't rise. So again, I continue from coming from a perspective of ignorance. If I don't know the answer to this yet, I'm going to err on the side of who has the most education,
Right.
who has the most training. How is this working now? But at the same time, I'm open to saying it's really not fair that this nurse practitioner who's practicing out there in Ripley has to pay someone $2,000 a month to rubber stamp what he or she is doing.
Right.
That's not right.
Yeah.
And so, I think if we had the confidence that nurse practitioners would not try to do things that they shouldn't do, and they would refer those to a specialist, that would give us more confidence in that. But at the same time, I go to nurse practitioners all the time.
Sure.
If I have an allergy flare up, if I have cold, whatever, I don't hesitate to go to them. I'm glad to go to them. But when you have cancer, you want to go see the oncologist.
Correct. Not the nurse practitioner.
That's right.
That's exactly right. I know. I've got one. My youngest is working on his nurse prac, and of course he has a lot of hands-on experience.
Absolutely.
So it's a touchy subject, I guess.
And you get up into the CRNAs and
all
the nurse anesthetists, and they have a lot of training.
They do.
And so all of these fields are overlapping, and we've got to navigate who can practice on their own without oversight from someone
Right,
else.
right. And
other than their licensing board.
And he has thrown out too just the fact that if you've been practicing for 30 years as a nurse practitioner, you have a lot of knowledge because you've got a lot of experience, real world experience. And somebody like that, I think we've even alluded to that, somebody like that I would trust a lot more than I'm going to trust the kid that just got out of school.
That's like I've said before, my desk mate,
Yes.
Donnie Scoggins. I
Sure.
mean, he's as a matter of fact, he's at the point where he's getting ready to retire.
Right.
So, you know, absolutely. Yeah,
You would trust him
Trust
because
him.
he's seen everything under the sun,
Yeah.
probably.
But people will vote with their feet, and I think if you just let them go see who they want to see, it's all going to shake out. But at the same time,
Yep.
these collaborative agreements need to be looked at.
I agree, they do. I tell you what, it's been fun having you here. You're going to have to come back. You
been
need to
fun.
bring him back.
Well, I'll bring
Well,
you
I've
back.
told you everything I know. There's nothing else.
I know better than that.
During the legislative session, we'll have to have you back.
No, we'll have to. We'll
We'll
get
have
him
to
back.
have you. I mean,
sometime.
you are right there, your sister
Well-
city, right next to us. So, you know,
Well,
we've enjoyed having you.
it's been a
on-
pleasure.
on the program. Thank you very much, Gene, for bringing him in, and thank you very much for doing what you do. I have to say this just as a citizen of Pearl, but I do trust what my Christian elected officials do. I don't watch over their shoulder, don't pay attention, because I know the character of the men. And thank you for introducing the character to us so that we know who you are a little bit, and that helps in just understanding how you're going to go about doing things. So thank you very much. Appreciate it. Thank you, Gene, for bringing him in. I know you've got
Thank
to
you
get
for
to
having
the
us.
meeting.
Appreciate you.
So
Let
thank
us
you very
go.
much. So I hope y'all enjoyed that conversation because I certainly did. Got a little bit to see about, to learn a little bit about Lee here. So thank you very much, Lee.
Thanks.
Anyway, we're going to step aside just a second. When we come back, we're going to talk about what's going on in Pearl. So don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
Hello, I'm Mayor Wyndham, and I'm thrilled to show you the city creating its own future. Pearl is located in Rankin County, the fastest growing county in Mississippi, and there's no question why. Access to great schools, even better shopping, and unbridled beauty make Pearl a town that truly embodies its name. And with a truly exceptional team of first responders, public safety is another key component of our success. With fantastic housing opportunities from quaint suburban neighborhoods to gorgeous lakefront properties, there's a place for you here in Pearl. You can't beat the location. Right outside of Pearl is the crossroads of the South, where Interstate 20 meets Interstate 55. From here you can travel anywhere within the state or the country. Or you can choose to stay right here in Pearl or experience the small town atmosphere, community pride, and heart of the local residents.
Welcome back into This Week in Pearl. I'm your host, Frank Hutton, and what a fantastic conversation that was. It was so nice getting to really meet Representative Lee Yancey from Flowood. It was great to have a good conversation with him and kind of find out who he is and learn about his character and where he comes from, you know, like Mama and them. We need to know where they come from. And I think that's a great benefit to all, and we really appreciate him taking some time out to come by and see us, and we definitely want to thank Representative Gene Newman for bringing him in and getting him on the program. All right, so what's going on in Pearl? Let's get to that. Well, we just had Pearl Day. Phenomenal turnout. That was fantastic. One of the best ones that we've had. Pearl Day in the park was wonderful. The weather was great. Music was good. The Absolute had a wonderful time out there. I think everybody did. You can see that we had food in the park and things for the kids to do. There was just lots and lots of fun to be had out there in the city. It's good family fun, family oriented. It's great stuff that was going on out there. We're glad. Then everybody moved over to Trustmark Park for a wonderful concert that night by Warren and Brett Michaels. It was packed. There were so many people there. It was an exciting time, and I think everybody had a really good time, and I know that the band members did as well. So now here's what's going on. In-person absentee voting for the general election is going on right now. So you can come by the city clerk's office here at City Hall from 8 in the morning till 5 in the evening and vote in person absentee. So be sure and do that. You're selecting the mayor of your choice, as well as there may be an alderman running in your district. So just check on that, but that is what's going to happen coming up soon. You'll have a mayor and an alderman being elected in the general. If you want to vote absentee, come by the city clerk's office and do that. Also, Main Street Pearl is presenting Midtown Sunset Series. This is a free concert that starts every Friday evening, like every Friday evening. So week to week to week, starting May 2nd, going through to June 27th. It'll start at 7 p.m. It's going to be at the City Hall green space, which is beside senior services. So, you know, you've got this big green area right between senior services and the health department. It's in that area. That's the city green space, so that's where it will be held. There's going to be everything from classic rock, country, southern blues, all kinds of wonderful music that's going to be there. Concessions will be available. No outside coolers are going to be allowed, so there will be concessions and stuff for purchase for you. Also, something that I know everybody waits for, that's glad to see it, spring cleanup is here. It starts again for us on May 3rd and goes through the 17th. So you put your leaves and your limbs at the road, place them in the street, make sure they're separated. You don't want to pile them all together. Make sure they're separated. You can take furniture and other odds and ends to the city compactor at no charge for Pearl residents only. So this is Pearl residents only. You have to show your identification that you are a Pearl resident. They will not accept hazardous materials like hazardous liquids, no explosive materials. Tires will not be accepted. So those things you cannot take to the compactor, but furniture and other odds and ends and things like that, you can. If you want to get some more information on that, just pick up the phone and dial 932-9222. That will connect you to the compactor, and they can tell you a little bit about it if you have some questions. Anyway, I want to thank you for joining us for This Week in Pearl, the Under the Dome series. Had a great time with our guest today. Look forward to seeing you next time right here. Until then, y'all have a great week.